Welcome back. As always, be sure to leave a comment if you have anything to add to this video, any comments about the channel in general or this series. Also, be sure to check out my other channel, WrightChoiceGames. It's one with the orange logo. And just a reminder that I am streaming every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I am now switching over to Twitch, so just WrightChoiceGames on Twitch. If you want to basically get a little preview of these videos, because I mostly just talk about Borderlands 4 predictions and Borderlands in general. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. So for those of you that have been keeping up with this series, we have already talked about the different characters, villains, planet, guns, and experimental game mechanics that I think are going to be in Borderlands 4, or really more just a wish list of what I had hoped to see in Borderlands 4. And this time we are talking about enemies. And I know I skipped ahead a bit from my initial list I posted in the first part, but it'll all make sense. I'll explain at the end of the video. But this time we're talking about enemies, and there is a wide variety. Everything from Vault Hunters to just your common psychos. All that stuff I'm going to be covering in this video. And as always, I do make these videos to hear your guys' opinions. So if there's anything you agree with, disagree with, any of your own cool ideas that you think would be cool and want me to include in a future video potentially, let me know down in the comments. And with all that out of the way, let's actually jump into it now. There is a very good chance for Borderlands 4 we're gonna open up multiple vaults, much like we did in Borderlands 3. So we're gonna have multiple vault monsters. And back when that was even just a speculation for Borderlands 3, I was so excited. Way back in those initial videos I made, way back at the start of this channel, of my predictions for Borderlands 3, I was so excited for the prospect of multiple vault hunters. And even back then, in just reviewing those videos, I said, oh, we're going to have such unique and cool vault monsters. Like, maybe we could have some kind of, underwater themed vault and then fight some kind of, sea serpent underwater fight. Give us, a flying vault monster. Maybe give us, floating platforms so we're not constantly looking in the air because those fights really suck. But it'll fly all around us, up and down, so we gotta, shoot down on it, shoot up above. Stuff like that. Give us a flying vault monster. Give us some kind of giant, Colossus, Shadow of the Colossus style monster that we have to climb on top of and target the weak points. It doesn't even, kind of realize we're there until we start to hurt it. Stuff like that is just so fun. There's so many cool, unique ideas they could give us, especially when it's not a final boss. If you're doing a final boss and that's the only vault monster we get to see, then yeah, it's going to be just probably some generic giant monster thing like we've gotten in the past, and they've been pretty disappointing, honestly, other than pre-sequel. Pre-sequel's final vault monster is fantastic, but that aside, all the final vaults have really been pretty disappointing. It's just kind of generic monster, and even the multiple ones we got in 3 all kind of blend together. Yeah, they were unique enough, I guess, but nothing really special about any of them. They all just felt like typical boss fights, and nothing really stood out with them. So that's why I'm thinking, if we're going to get multiple vault monsters, why not make them super unique? Give them unique environments, like an underwater one. Give us a sky one. Give us some kind of giant open field it's just such a big monster. Those are just the 3 main ideas I have. But there's so much more you could do with that idea of actually making more unique monsters in their mechanics rather than just, oh, they look different. Now, the bandits have been left in a very interesting place at the end of Borderlands 3. Uniting them under the one cult of the Children of the Vault was such a fun idea for 3, and while, yeah, the game has problems, I like the idea of unified bandit clans. However, with the cult broken up, it would make sense that they'd all just go back to their separate bandit clans, but I almost wish they would stick more to factions and actually have, almost like a gang war kind of thing we can interact with, we can see 2 rival bandit clans actually fighting in the street, and maybe not be able to actually pick a side because whoever wins is probably going to want to kill us afterwards anyway, but actually see some conflict. Stuff like that, and I've said it in the past, just makes the world feel so lived in. I love coming across when a bullymong wanders into a bandit camp and they just try to gun down the bullymong. It's not just us versus the world. It's an actual lived-in world with conflicts going on. These guys are wanting to survive. So it would be cool if maybe they break apart. Even maybe keep it there still is, a following of Tyreen. They don't know she died. And maybe some broke off and wanted to follow Troy instead. So, right there could be 2 potential factions. Maybe we get to see Vaughn's old clan come back, the Sun Smashers. Like they reform afterwards and become kind of allies, kind of not, if Vaughn comes back to lead them. Stuff like that's just so cool. Like I love that kind of aspect of games where we can just see the world interacting with each other, not necessarily just interacting with us. So actually seeing rival bandit clans like come and actual fight each other, not just hang around and wait for us to show up to shoot at us, would just make the world feel a lot more lived in. Also, it's not out of the realm possibility. We've already seen different bandit clans do their own thing, like the whole followers of the Firehawk initiative. Like they're all flame psychos, so all their stuff is like very pyro themed. We could get like a cryo version, a corrosion version. Like that would just be a easy way to identify them underneath different banners. And also it would be cool to be able to see like what would a corrosive nomad look like, what would a corrosive psycho, like completely change their outfits, change their color scheme, change everything about them, and give them underneath different banners. And then it would be cool just to see that elemental aspect, just because I want to see more elemental psychos. I want to see more elemental of the different bandits, because bandits are just pretty generic. You walk around with a flame gun, pretty easy, burns flesh, whatever, cool. And then it just became a lot harder when they were that pyro psychos and whatnot. So it would be cool to see all the clans like almost undertake different elemental as their like underneath their banner. Like that is their banner of we're the corrosion ones, we're in like the swamp pits, stuff like that. I could see working out really well. And maybe not even having them connected, but just having different elemental versions of every type of bandit would just be cool to see. Personally, the loader bots from Borderlands 2 are like peak enemy design for me. Not only do they just look cool, like I just love the way they look, but also the way you could shoot off their arms, shoot them in the torso and remove their legs, shoot them in that little eye for that critical spot. Like that kind of destruction is just so cool to see in games. And while, yeah, okay, you don't want to go for like the super violence of like being able to rip a guy's arm off. Like if you shoot him in the arm, he can lose that arm, then you can only shoot one-handed, which that would also be cool to see them implement with the bandits. But fine, you don't want to implement that. We need that in the next robot faction for Borderlands 4. I would love for them to bring back loaders, but also I don't want Hyperion to be the enemy again, so that's, you know, a whole thing. And the Model 1 bots we faced, while I like their design, it really didn't feel like it had that kind of destructibility like the loaders had. And comparing the two, I definitely prefer the loader bots design still. But whatever next faction we're up against in this new game, they're probably going to have whatever their robot fighters are. Just to mix up the game, we'll have to use corrosive weapons. That's just an easy solution, is okay, now we're fighting robots. So whatever their design is, they have to have destructibility in mind. I want to be able to rip off armor pieces. I want to be able to like shoot them and just, I want to see the destruction on them. We've definitely gotten to a point where they can do that in these games. They did that with destructible environments and cover and stuff in Borderlands 3, and they did that with Borderlands 2 loader bots. Why should we not see that going forward? I want to see more destructibility. I want to be able to shoot off arms again, shoot off like an individual leg, shoot off, maybe they have like an extra arm cannon or like a shoulder mounted cannon, be able to target that and shoot that thing off. Stuff like that is just so cool to see in games, and really why wouldn't we have that in Borderlands 4? But a more specific type of robot that I would love to face, again, this is one of my ones I had in my Borderlands 3 prediction videos, but I stand by it as probably one of the best ideas I've had because I think it'd be so cool, is to have some kind of like little engineer robots that don't hurt you, but they come together to form a bigger threat that would be a lot tougher to fight. Almost like a Goliath in the way of like, okay, you shoot their head off, they run around raging, and the more enemies they kill, the tougher it gets, then you get more XP and more loot after you kill it. Kind of the same concept, but they're these little robots. I'm talking like, not like super little, like maybe half the size of Claptrap, so they're still like a good size. Run around, scampering around, little robot legs, whatever. But then they form together and like become something bigger and more of a threat. Like there's a little leg one, so it attaches to the torso, boom, it has one leg now. and a second leg, then an arm, another arm, and maybe like a shoulder cannon, stuff like that. And each one is unique, so if you like specifically saw one like, oh shit, that one's like a rocket arm, I don't want to deal with rockets. So you can even shoot just that one before it gets to the big mass of robots, all while also fighting other enemies. So it's not like you're just sitting there tapping your toes waiting for this thing to assemble. It becomes a pull and push and pull game of, do I want to take care of the engineer bots just to get them out of the way so I don't have to worry about them later while I'm also being shot by other things? Or do I want to build up a little bit so I can get more loot, get more XP, and just have a fun fight at the end? Because also, you know, it could be a fun thing to fight. That's just an idea I've been, you know, thinking of since my initial Borderlands 3 predictions, and I stand by it. It would be really fun, because any enemy that makes you think about gameplay more than just, oh, those are the bad guys, I gotta shoot them, like those, there are not a lot of moments like that, especially in these games, but there are those moments where you have to more think about, like the Goliath example I had earlier. You don't have to think a whole lot about it, but it is one of those things of like, oh, you know, maybe I do want to fight a Goliath right now, so I'm going to shoot in the head and then just kind of hang back for a while and let it do its thing. Or you can shoot it, let it take care of some things while you fight other things. Like, stuff like that, just kind of that dynamic gameplay is super cool. And again, it kind of ties into more of the game interacting with itself, not necessarily just with you. Like, this is a lived-in game world where more things can happen. So while you're fighting other things, you're fighting other robots, you're fighting whatever soldiers from whatever faction kind of thing, in the background, this giant robot is being built, and you can kind of pick and choose, well, I don't want it to have this component, so you shoot that piece before it gets added. And when it gets to a certain point, then it will start fighting back, or whenever it's fully built, or whatever like that. Something like that, I think, would just add another layer onto gameplay that could make certain encounters a lot more interesting. Those are the three main categories I wanted to mostly discuss. So here's just kind of a few extra things. No invulnerability phases. Like, that just was such an annoying part of Borderlands 3, because every boss fight, it felt like I was just, you know, doing good. Usually pretty easy, like just demolishing him, then, oh, okay, overshield, now you can't shoot him while he does whatever. And half the time it wasn't even like they were in a new animation, like transitioning to a new phase. It felt like there were so many fights that it just blocked you for no reason, like just to let the fight go on a little bit longer. Like, I understand, okay, you want to do a phase transition, you got a cool animation while they're doing that, okay, block me then, whatever. Like, there's a lot of decent ways to have an invulnerability phase, but in Borderlands 3 in particular, there were just so many times where we randomly, like, almost like flipped a switch and just said, okay, now you can't shoot them because reasons. Alright, so now I just get to sit here and look at them for a few seconds. Why can't I do damage? Like, there's so many times where it just felt like there wasn't a reason to, and it got super annoying. So that's just a wishlist for Borderlands 4. No invulnerability phases unless it actually makes sense. And on the topic of like stage transitions or boss transitions, have more unique bosses that actually like have drastic transitions mid-fight. Like, if you want to give me an invulnerability phase, fine by me, but give it a good reason to, like, completely change the fight afterwards. I'm not talking like, oh, now it has 2 extra moves and is more aggressive or whatever. No, I'm talking like transition the stage. Like, we're not even on the same battlefield anymore. Like, we're moving areas. Something changed. We're in the air now. We're underground. Stuff like that. Like, just dynamic bosses that drastically change what happened, so it actually feels like we're fighting something bigger than life. It's an actual boss. It's not just, okay, here's an enemy you've been fighting the entire game, but now he has a shit ton more health, maybe a couple extra moves and a special name. There were a couple like that in Borderlands 3, and especially the Love and Tentacles DLC, where that's what all the boss fights felt like, except the last one for that one, but that's a whole tangent. But give us an actual reason. If it's a boss fight, make it feel like a boss fight. Switching gears a little bit to talk about Guardians, I hope that Guardians are sprinkled out Borderlands 4 a little more frequently than they are for most Borderlands games. mostly going into the story wise. Now I'll talk about that more in my story video, but basically the gist is I really hope that Borderlands 4 is a game to lead up to this big war that was teased at the end of the pre-sequel and Borderlands 3 DLC. So it would make sense that we would see more Guardian involvement. And also, I mean, like what we're seeing in the pre-sequel, the Guardians we fight, and on Necrodefeo and I think a couple other spots in Borderlands 3, Guardians are just a pretty cool enemy to fight. They have so many different varieties and so many fun things they can do with that going forward, because it is an alien race, and they've already gotten pretty creative with their designs and attacks and what they can do as a species. So I feel like that they're just ripe to be more present in Borderlands 4 in kind of random areas. Like, even if it is just protecting vaults, if we have multiple vaults and we see them multiple times, that's great. But I really think the story is going to revolve heavily around at least Guardian involvement. So it only makes sense if we see them and get to fight them more frequently throughout the game. That about does it for this one, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching, and please leave it down in the comments if you have anything to add to this video. Do you agree with me, disagree with me, have any cool ideas of your own? Enemies is such a diverse topic to discuss. I miss so many things and different ideas that I've probably had over the years and just never wrote down. But please, if you have any ideas of your own, let me know down in the comments. I make these videos to have discussions with you guys. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to join me next time when I talk about the DLC. And in that one, I'm going to talk a lot more about the games as a service kind of aspect, because it feels like we're kind of pushing that direction, unfortunately. But I'll get all into that in next Friday's video, hopefully. And a reminder that I am streaming every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I'm switching over to Twitch. So I just made that channel like a couple days ago. It's called WrightChoiceGames. So be sure to check it out, join in, say hi. Mostly just talking about Borderlands 4 predictions. And yeah, probably going to be talking about DLC and games as a service, because that's always a fun topic to bring up. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.